abusing that power. And that's why right now we are begging, calling on the DOJ, Merrick Garland, to stop this, okay? Come in and take this case over from the Chevron law firm and prosecute me directly. I'm probably the only lawyer in America begging to be prosecuted right now by the DOJ. I need a professional. These people won't negotiate a resolution. They won't negotiate a plea. Their goal is to destroy me, and they are abusing our system to do so with no due process of law. I'm in a very vulnerable position. If the DOJ doesn't step in, they're going to railroad me into prison. And frankly, I have a lot of fears right now. I don't think they want me to continue this advocacy, and they'll do almost anything to stop me.
Yeah, I'm incredibly outraged and enraged by your story, and I just want to make this clear for the audience because, you know, you've shown the connection between Chevron and the law firm here. What is Lewis Kaplan, this senior judge who's in the Southern District? I mean, incredibly powerful. What is his connection in this corruption? Like, how does he personally benefit?
I'm trying to figure out that guy for years. He's been targeting me for years. I'll mention that there's a 50-page misconduct complaint filed against him for his abuse of power, signed by 200 lawyers. That's sitting before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and they just sit on it for months. I mean, they don't even open an investigation. They all protect each other, and it's getting really bad. But in terms of Kaplan, before he was appointed to the bench by President Clinton, he was a tobacco industry defense lawyer. He represented Philip Morris, Brown and Williamson. He was at the highest levels of the defense committee. They were employing every legal trick in the book to prevent liability being imposed on the tobacco industry, an industry based on the idea you're going to kill 5 million people a year around the globe. This is his background. Then he gets on the bench. He's just very pro-corporate. And I think when Chevron steered this case to him, he wanted to carry out his ideological agenda and destroy the idea that Ecuadorian indigenous peoples can actually get their own courts to impose a large judgment on an American company that abused their human rights. He hated that. And he basically tried to engineer the outcome of the case by structuring it in a way that we couldn't present evidence. I mean, he decided this case on day one before he heard any evidence. I could tell. And the way he did that is he wouldn't look at any of the environmental evidence. He let Chevron pay Guerra $2 million to come in and lie. Guerra later admitted lying. He still accepted his story. And he engaged in all sorts of other tricks of the legal trade, if you're a judge who wants to abuse his power, to make sure I was convicted without a jury of crimes in a civil case. I've never been charged with those crimes, much less convicted. But if you look at the media reporting and some of the press, or what Chevron says is Donziger has been adjudicated guilty of extortion, money laundering, wire fraud, obstruction. These are all things he found that I did without any basis. It was all based on this false testimony from this witness who said I bribed the judge in Ecuador when it never happened. And that's been rejected, by the way, by 28 appellate judges in Ecuador and Canada, including the Supreme Courts of both of those countries. So you basically have, let's look at the landscape here. You have one low-level U.S. trial judge who found a fraud occurred in Ecuador, and you have 28 appellate judges in Ecuador and Canada, including the Supreme Courts of both countries, who found it did not occur and that the judgment was valid, and that the real fraud is the evidence Chevron put in before Kaplan to try to accuse me of fraud. That's the fraud, not what I did. It's what they did. So you have one U.S. trial judge trying to overturn the decisions of the Supreme Courts of two sovereign nations. It's inappropriate. It's arrogant. It's imperialist, and it's wrong. Now, imagine this. Imagine if the role was reversed and some first-level Ecuadorian trial judge tried to do the same to our Supreme Court, how much that person would be laughed at. Okay, and that's what Kaplan has tried to do to Ecuador's Supreme Court and Canada's Supreme Court. When I say Ecuador, this is the country where Chevron insisted the trial be held, where Chevron accepted jurisdiction, the same courts that Chevron praised throughout the 1990s when he was trying to move the case out of the U.S. to Ecuador.
All right, so what is, and we should remind people the reason why they can't charge you with criminal fraud in this country, right? Like they didn't charge you with criminal fraud in this country. It was just
never indicted. I'll say this: when Chevron's law firm, Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, headed by Randy Mastro, former Rudy Giuliani deputy mayor. He's an odious person in my view. Okay, he's enriched himself, billed hundreds of millions of dollars into his firm to try to destroy me. And one of the things he did in 2010, just reported by the Wall Street Journal the other day, is he went down to the Southern District of New York and tried to get me criminally prosecuted for this supposed fraud in Ecuador that didn't happen. And of course, my apologies for the noise. Of course, the SDNY refused at that point to prosecute me. Okay. Fast forward. This has been a 10-year Chevron plan to try to put me in prison. Fast forward to 2019 when Judge Kaplan charged me, and the SDNY again refused to prosecute me. Why do they keep refusing to prosecute me? Let me tell you something. If you're going to be charged with a crime, and I hope it never happens to anybody, but if you are going to be charged with a crime, you need a jury. I mean, that's the fundamental, right? They've charged me twice with crimes in Chevron-run prosecutions where I wasn't given a jury. The corporate takeover of this little nook of the U.S. federal judiciary is unprecedented. I think it's a playbook for the fossil fuel industry for the future. That is, if they can get away with it in my case, they're going to use it against other people. And we need to watch this, and we need to stop this.
What is the hearing on Monday? What specifically, like, what is this hearing about on Monday?
The hearing is whether I am innocent or guilty of these criminal contempt charges that Judge Kaplan, not the government, that Judge Kaplan filed against me.
But why is it taking so long? I mean, you've been in your house for 600 plus days.
Well, understand, like a year of that was COVID, and There were no trials happening. Look, I never thought they'd keep me locked up. I mean, I shouldn't be locked up. Okay, that's just wrong. So I kept thinking I was going to be let out, and my lawyers couldn't even come to court. I had a lawyer in Oregon. Marty Garbus is 87 years old. He's living in the Cape during COVID. People didn't want to, this is pre-vaccine. People didn't want to come to court and risk their lives so Chevron and Judge Kaplan and Judge Preska could railroad me into prison. I couldn't get my lawyers to come to court. And frankly, I'm 59. I didn't want to get COVID and die in prison. Okay. So we asked for delays. Witnesses couldn't get to court. Preska was so, she had such an appetite to do the case that when there's literally no other cases going on in New York because of COVID, there's 1,000 people in jail waiting for trials, in jail, who can't get courtroom time because of COVID. She was trying to rush me into trial as a misdemeanor case via Zoom. And she said, you go into court and your lawyers can represent you by Zoom over their computers. That's how out there she is, okay, and trying to destroy me. And, of course, we wouldn't do it, so it kept getting delayed. She never released me.
Okay, and so which is also just sort of bizarre. I mean, I don't know what the theory is that you would have, fled to?
They put forth this pretext that I'm a risk of flight, that I'm going to go to Ecuador. I have a wife. I have a 14-year-old son. I face a misdemeanor. I don't have a passport. They took that. I have an ankle brace. Like, I'm really going to go to Ecuador? I mean, I can't even get on a plane. I don't have a passport. It's all just made up BS to justify keeping me imprisoned in my own home.
So the hearing is on Monday, and this is to, I guess, assess these charges. Yeah. And where is the Department of Justice on this? Like, what point would they intervene? I mean, could they step in and say, you know what, we're going to prosecute this, or could they step in and say, hey, this is, what could the DOJ do? What are the different scenarios?
The DOJ could do a bunch of things. The most important thing they could do is just take back the prosecution from the private Chevron law firm. They have the power to do that. This is a conflict of interest. It's flagrant. It violates DOJ policy. It violates the rule of law. It violates the Constitution, in our view. They should take it back, release me, and then review the case and decide what to do. I actually think if they review the case, they'll do the same thing they did 2 years ago. They'll say, this is ridiculous. We're not prosecuting this guy. He didn't do anything wrong. and it'll go away. So the Chevron plan to criminalize me, to get a criminal conviction and put me in jail, is heavily dependent on the DOJ not acting. Okay. The second thing the DOJ should do is an investigation into the corruption in the Southern District of New York among the judges. Okay. And Chevron. There is corruption. And the corruption, they're all talking. There's ex parte communications between the Chevron prosecutor and the Chevron judges. That's illegal. Judges can't talk ex parte to one party and not the other. It's happening. We've accused them of it. They haven't denied it. We've asked for an investigation. Again, the Second Circuit has done nothing based on our request for an investigation. When we asked for emails between the prosecutor and the judges, Judge Preska, who's presiding over this, you call it a hearing. It's actually a trial, in quotes. It's not really a trial because the outcome is preordained. But she refuses to give us the information. So it's a closed circle of people committed to my destruction. There's no neutral judge who will hear any of our motions. For example, there's thousands of people around the world that want to listen to my trial. We've had Zoom access to every court proceeding in my case up to this point. Suddenly on the eve of trial, Judge Preska terminates all Zoom access. They are trying to have a secret tribunal closed off to the public, closed off to international trial monitors. There's a trial monitoring committee, which you almost never see in the United States of America. These are committees that usually they went to Nuremberg. They go to Turkey. They go to Saudi Arabia. They go to Russia. They don't do it in the U.S. because we're hopefully a good enough legal system where it's not necessary. But in my case, they're doing it, this misdemeanor case. And this Chevron law firm, by the way, has billed taxpayers over $500,000 to prosecute me. There's 3 lawyers. They charge $300 an hour each. The average defense lawyer to defend a misdemeanor is paid $3,400. They billed over $500,000. This is a public subsidy to Chevron to carry out its campaign to demonize the human rights lawyer who held them accountable.
And lastly, what can listeners of this program do? I mean, is it contact your congresspeople? We've seen there's already a letter there. I mean, is it contact?
There's a couple of things. We have a website which has more specific instructions. Please go to it. It's called freedonziger.org. One word, free, DONZIGER. And it has information about how to contact Merrick Garland. Needs to be called, needs to be emailed. Secondly is you can join our campaign. There's a button where we will get your email and we will give you regular updates. And thirdly, if you can, we have a defense fund because I cannot tell you how expensive it is to deal with these monsters. If you care to help us, please give money to the defense fund, which is held in trust in a Washington state law firm that has worked with me for years. And it's used to pay legal expenses as well as some of our household expenses because while I've been locked up for 2 years, I haven't earned a dime and we need to eat. So the best way to combat Chevron on this situation, is to help protect me in this way and go to the website. The final thing I want to say, Sam, is, this is much bigger than me. They are attacking me to not pay the people they poisoned in Ecuador. It's very important. These are indigenous groups. Rural communities, people I've worked with now for 27 years. I've been there 250 times back and forth as a lawyer. And Chevron has calculated that by locking me up and doing this to me, somehow they're going to not have to pay the judgment they owe to the people of Ecuador. Luckily, there are other lawyers working on this, and I don't think they're going to get away with it. But it is connected. And by protecting me, you're protecting the right of the Ecuadorians to their lawyer, the person they've chosen to help them all these years. And I just want people to not forget that this is really about the people of Ecuador. And while I'm suffering, and believe me, we are suffering, we're strong, we're hopeful, we're resilient. The Nobel laureates and all the people who backed us, even the honor of being on your show and telling you the story matters a lot in terms of raising our spirits and giving us the impetus to fight on. And believe me, we will fight on.
Well, Steve Donziger, the website is freedonziger.org. We'll put a link to that in the YouTube and podcast descriptions. Good luck. We'll be following the case.
Yeah. One other thing. Follow me on Twitter if you can. I'm at S Donziger, and it's on Twitter where I put out a bunch of very current materials about developments in the case and